Hi, everybody. Welcome. Today is Friday, March the 4th. I last night completed the first journal entry for a new series that I'm doing, which is basically surviving emotionally and mentally abusive relationship with a very scary narcissistic sociopath behavior, not just behavior, but a person with that behavior. And so it's just been on me today, and I thought I'm ready to go ahead and dive back in and continue the next part. So thank you for joining me. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and make sure that you hit the like button as well. Excuse me. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start. It would probably be a good idea to watch the first entry from last night, March the 3rd. But I'll go ahead and just lay some groundwork. So I had talked about and shared, how does somebody get roped into or find themselves in a relationship that is so destructive? It tears you down in every way possible and leaves you almost destroyed. And I said that for me, it was a compromise. I compromised my values. I compromised, and I'm going to tell you the initial compromise. But I also shared about the enemy of your soul and your spirit, which I refer to as the liar. There's a lot of counterfeit. You know, God has everything that God provides is pure and is right. And the enemy, the liar, has a counterfeit for everything as well. And so a lot of things were very appealing, I'll just say. So I had found myself at 33, single and wanting to find who is my soulmate and what did that look like. And I had certain ideals that I wanted. And I met an individual. It was a Sunday afternoon. A friend, she wasn't really a true friend, it was more like an acquaintance in the art world, invited me into inner Houston for a Sunday brunch at a very popular place that was known for their Sunday brunches. Now, I didn't bar hop. I was recently single, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know about Sunday fun days. I was very, very pure, very innocent in regards to all of that. I spent all of my 20s and the first part of my 30s so active in my church and active in my youth, leading youth group and doing missions work and then working on my own. So I just really had no concept. I didn't know Sunday fun day was a thing. And I remember we went to this very crowded restaurant. It was 2 floors. And we had a table. She had reserved us a table. And there were lots of people there. And they were crowding for space. And there were 2 men together. And they approached the table because we had 2 seats because it was a table for 4 and there were 2 seats available. So they sat down and thus began this conversation. And I'm going to call this the setup. So let me just say real quickly, there are some people in life, they can be female or male, that obviously that abuse, emotional and mental abuse, and have narcissistic personality disorders. And they know exactly what they're doing. Calculating, manipulating. And it doesn't always start out that way, but they have that in their history. And then it continues to come out in a relationship. And this is why these people don't have lasting relationships, is because of their behaviors. So I met this and we struck up conversations, and wow, lo and behold, well-traveled, loves art museums, knows a little bit about a lot of subjects, which is always interesting and fun. And just talked and talked, and we all just kind of hit it off. And I thought this was kind of interesting, and so the afternoon progressed, and we let them sit at the table. And I now know, and I learned, and I obviously, I got a clue that it was definitely a place to be seen, to see and be seen, and a pickup joint. But it was very classy, or higher scale, if you will. So the afternoon went by, and I was so excited and happy to get out. And it's like, wow, this is a whole new experience, because it was a whole new experience. And when the afternoon ended, this individual, we were all walking out to our vehicles, and this individual took my hand in his face and proceeded to kiss me. Now, there was some attraction there for sure, and but here's what happened. I don't know if this is going to make sense to a lot of people, but I'm just going to have to tell you how it happened. When this person went in to kiss me, I received it. But I did not anticipate a full open mouth, assertive kiss. And it was literally like a vacuum had infiltrated my whole mouth, in my mouth, sucking the life out of me. It wasn't the life out of me. It was, I could feel what some would say this energy. It was very commanding, very powerful, hypnotic, almost like a drug. I now know that everything inside of me that God had deposited in me was being literally sucked out. Like the Holy Spirit of God was being sucked out of me. Because when he stopped, it was just like in my mouth. I was instantly dazed. Had instant confusion. I had instant disorientation. I had instant emptiness. And I was like, who is he? Who are you? Who are you? I've never encountered anything like this before. And I remember driving on the freeway and thinking, what has just happened? What has just happened to me? And who is this? And he must be the one. He's the man of my dreams. This is supposed to be my husband of my life. And the next day, I remember I phoned, and then we made plans to meet the following Friday. Now, here's where the big compromise comes, and I have no choice but to just be completely, brutally transparent, because this is how the liar works. And even for someone to go, how could you have been so dumb, or how could you have made this decision? So that whole week, nonstop, it was, who is this man? What has happened to me? And I was filled with almost like, curiosity is not even the word, an infatuation. And anything else in my life did not matter. It was this individual. So this Friday comes, and I meet him at his place. Nice place, humble place, nothing fancy or anything. And he said he had music playing, and it was like music that I enjoyed. It wasn't necessarily Christian music, but I like all kinds of music, like Gypsy Kings and classics from the 60s and jazz and blues. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really cool. He's playing music I like. And he asked me, he said, hey, I have some X. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what ecstasy was. Being in the 80s, I knew cocaine. I knew everybody knew what cocaine is, and everybody knew pot, marijuana, and acid. But I never heard of ecstasy or X. And I said, I don't do drugs. And I remember very distinctly saying, I don't do drugs. And he says, well, did you know, he says, I remember our conversations from Sunday, and it sounds like to me that you really have a lot inside of you that you need to get out, and so many disappointments and all this weight that you've carried on yourself for many years, and that ecstasy is actually used by psychologists to ease their patients, and it just opens them up to talk. And it actually used to be legal. Then they made it illegal, but you can still get it from a pharmacy, from a prescription, from your doctor, and it's used just to relax and open you up and talk and express your feelings, things that you have suppressed. And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know about that. And he says, no, he says, I know. And he says, it's really good. He says, look, it's a little tablet. And he showed me this tiny tablet. And he said, I'll just break it in half because you'll probably be really sensitive. And I just want you to drink lots of water, and we'll just listen to music. And whenever you feel like talking, you can just talk. Sorry, my contacts are so dry. That was my compromise. I compromised right then and there. I justified it, and a part of me was like, I don't know about this. But I was so enamored and infatuated in a very unholy, unnatural way from what encountered that Sunday before. There was already, I'm going to say the word like a spell. There was already like a spell on me. And so I agreed, and I said, okay, well, okay. This isn't like real drugs, whatever. So I had a half of the tablet, and I drank water and stuff, and sure enough, I just began feeling so funny. My body felt super heavy, and he was right. I laid down, and I literally talked all night. I talked all night. I don't even know what all. I just remember talking, and I remember him. I just remember feeling like I could just express everything in the world. And I felt safe and all of these things. And he never made a move on me physically. And the next morning, I remember thinking, oh, wow, this has really opened my eyes up to something I've never even known about or heard about. And I feel so safe with him. And this was the beginning of the greatest deceit in my life. And it began with a choice. And the feeling of euphoria and safety and I know now later, I learned throughout my time with him that it was a party drug and all of this. So, as a 30-something, 33-year-old, it wasn't like partying and raving and all that silliness. It was used as a manipulation tool to, the heck? It was used as a manipulation tool to get to know me. Is this girl says who she really is? And he was intrigued by me. I talked a lot about God. I talked a lot about my faith. I talked a lot about growing up. I talked a lot about that. So he was like, wow, this girl she's pure. And later he would always tell me, I never cheated on you because I was afraid of what God would do to me, because I know who you are with him. But yet he was just so awful in so many ways. But so he used that as a tool to get to know me. Who was I really? Everything happened really quickly. Within months, we were nonstop together. He sold his house. Where am I minute-wise? 16 minutes. He sold his smaller place and bought us a very large home. I failed to mention he had three children, and they were part middle school, part high school. And I was so excited and ecstatic because I thought this is the answer to all my prayers, because I didn't think I could get pregnant. And I thought, this guy, and he talked about all the traveling he wanted to take me to, all these museums all over, and he named different countries. He frequently traveled every fall, every spring, every winter, and I was so excited. And I never felt used or any of that initially. And what was I say something about? But that was the initial tool, and that I wasn't some used up, jaded person, because he ended up having quite a bit of money, and I wouldn't have known that by what he drove and how he lived. So he had me pick out a house, and I was over the moon excited that I could have a home, and he knew how much I wanted to have children. He knew. I remember that night telling him, I just want to be a wife and a mother. And so, the liar checked off all my boxes. All the boxes were ticked. And I had a little place in Houston, a little rental house. It was like a turn of the century. And I moved in with him. I knew it was wrong. I justified it because, well, no, he's the answer. And he knew I was a believer. He knew I was a Christian, and he knew that my faith was very strong. But every time I wanted to go to church, there was always something stopping me. There was always an excuse or whatever. And then little by little, I realized with his friends, it was very worldly, very, very. And then, but I said, okay, all right, well, I don't want to judge anybody. In fact, those are the kind of things that began to happen as I began to be more and more uncomfortable. I loved having the kids when they were available. He did not have custody, and there was a joint custody, and we used to have to drive a distance. And oftentimes, and here's where the signs start to come in with the abuse. I don't want to drive. Will you drive? Sure, I'll drive, no problem. Well, every time you drive, the nitpicking began. Why did you use your blinker like that? Any little thing about driving was nitpicked and pieced apart. So much so that it became unbearable to even drive. So you're feeling constantly criticized. And then it was like in public, or the kids got in, but he began to be the true colors, and they already knew the colors. They couldn't believe that I was with him. They're like, oh my gosh, you're the best thing that ever happened to our dad. Maybe he's going to change. Okay. Then the signs were beginning to get more and more and more. Control, criticisms, everything from driving to what I was wearing to how I spoke to a joke that I made or maybe was made and I didn't understand it. There's just, I know I'm being vague, but there was just so much. And so I remember this one particular incident, and this is important that I share because God has a very, very incredible sense of humor and timing. It was a large home that he bought, and we were putting away boxes in the attic, and the attic was pretty much built out. It was a huge space. It was huge, and it was all platformed. But except when you went up, there was like a game room and stuff, and then there was like 3 stairs up into the attic where it became flat. But there was this weird space on the right where it just went right into the pink stuff, the insulation. And I was carrying boxes I couldn't see, and I made a right-hand turn, and my right leg shot right through the ceiling, and it was and it ended up being a spot right in front of the pantry. My entire thigh was black and blue, swelled up and so hardened, and all he did was scream at me. Scream and yell and berate and isolate and stonewall me the screaming began initially. The stomping, the screaming, it was like this incredible, it was just like this fit, but worse than a fit. And then came the stonewalling for a couple of days. How could I do this to his house? And I'm thinking, but I thought this was something we were building and you did this for us and me. And I never felt so humiliated and so small. That was the first big thing the first time I'd ever seen him display such rage and condescendingness, but on a huge scale. And then it would just begin little things. Fortunately, the business I was in, I had access to a wonderful sheetrocker and painter, and it was patched, and it was like you'd never even tell. But I never got an apology. I never got, are you okay? Are you okay? And I mean, for weeks, my thigh was black and blue, green, yellow, the whole thigh. I was in so much pain, I could hardly walk. He never acknowledged it, never asked how I was, never said, I'm sorry that happened. Nothing, ever. And I knew then, I thought, what have I done? I mean, we're talking, this is 7 months in. And so things began to escalate from there. Once I was in his place, and that's when the control and the beating down of who I was little by little could begin, because there were no outside sources that could stop it. Even his kids over time later would tell me, why are you with him? Why are you letting him talk to you this way? And this is towards the end. And so that's the beginning. That's the beginning of realizing that I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't call it that yet. I just thought he has a bad temper. Because then there were times what was very confusing, like Valentine's. He would go down into Houston, like the floral places, and buy these massive arrangement And I was like, oh, he does love me. So there were things that would happen, just would chisel away at me. But then he would do something and I would think, oh, but he loves me. But he does love me. And I love his kids, and he just hasn't been loved enough, and he just has a bad temper, and he didn't have a relationship with his dad. Interesting, right? And then I began to discover how much he hated his mother. So much so to the point that when she developed breast cancer, he flat out said, I hope she dies. I hope the bitch dies. Then I began to discover pictures and albums that he saved of a woman that he had a very long-term relationship with. And I found her eyes gouged out in the pictures. And that scared me. That scared me a lot. But I couldn't say anything. It was like, oh my gosh, of course not. So my first trip to Europe was supposed to be so exciting. We were going to Holland. We were going to Amsterdam and Brussels and Bruges, and he had some people there that he knew. And my first trip ended up being, we're going to fit you into I want you to wear a latex dress so we can go into underground catacomb clubs. I did not know what that was. I did not know anything until I got there, until I got to the place that his friends did latex clothing and what that was. Now, I will say I was never compromised in any of these places. But I realized it was very clear. This person is an executive, corporate world, here at home. And when Europe comes, completely different person. But I was I was already getting so, in my mind, entrapped with how would I ever leave this? Like, how would I ever leave him without him freaking out? And what would I do anyway? Where would I go? What would I do? Because he already had me thinking like that. And I remember saying, I don't want to be here. These were underground, extreme perversion in the catacombs in Berlin, in Amsterdam and surrounding areas. He was fascinated and loved hanging around the red light district, and then there's some other places where you can, I forgot the name of it, but there's like these little huts on the side of a river bank or water bank, and people will go in and out to get serviced, and he just liked hanging out there watching people go in and out. And I just thought, what am I doing here? This is not normal. And every time I would protest, I would just say, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. You are so judgmental. I was told I was judgmental. Who are you? You think you're a Christian? What are you doing here? Hold on. Can't take that. Hey, I'm doing a video journal right now. Can I call you right back? Sorry. Okay, bye. Bye. That just so happened to be one of my girlfriends who was with me during this journey, that I literally would cry and sit in her front yard and cry. And just say, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out? So my first trip to Europe was not what I thought it was going to be at all. Yes, we went to museums, but when we went to museums, I was so excited, and I would talk, like I would say, "Oh my gosh, look at that!" Like, we went to like the Van Gogh Museum and da da da, and I would be berated at the museum very quietly. He would look at me and say, "Shut up! You're embarrassing me. You're acting like a typical American." Things like that, just out of an innocent excitement of seeing paintings that I'd always seen in books. Any opportunity that an abuser can do to make you feel humiliated and demoralized in a public setting, it just cut you at your knees, that's abuse. You have nowhere to go. You're in an unfamiliar territory, and they have all the power. An abuser, I'm going to try to close out here soon. It's 30 minutes already. An abuser will create situations where they have all the power and you don't. You don't. And if you try to stand up for yourself and protect yourself or have a voice, they will shut you down, ridicule you, judge you, create fear in you. And I don't mean judge you, I mean tell you, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And in my case, when I traveled, and this was the first trip, there were multiple trips over and over. Paris was a nightmare, all the trips to Greece. I finally started to learn how to stand up for myself over those years and those times, those trips. I was told, "Oh, you poor helpless little thing. You're just so sad. You're so deprived." And would walk off Stonewall for days, take me to different cities, would leave me in the middle of the city, disappear, and I didn't have any euro, not even my passport on me. I'll tell about that stuff later. So when I came home after that trip, he acted like nothing ever happened. That's the other thing. They act like nothing ever happened. And if something did happen, it's your fault. If you didn't behave this way, I wouldn't act this way. So it's always a projection on you. Always. I hope I'm really explaining this. I have to think about more things, but I just wanted to share how it initially everything happened, the confusion, everything. Oh, praise God. Here's my husband. Hey, honey.
Hey, what are you doing?
Hey, I'm actually video journaling right now. I'm about to wrap it up. Can I call you back?
Yeah, yeah. How did you go and see your dad today? Or
Yeah. I had lunch with my dad. It was awesome. Hey, babe, I'm like literally live video journaling right now. Okay, bye.
okay, bye.
Okay. Oh, what a difference. Anyway, so, goodness gracious, 33 minutes in. Okay. So the abuser will create scenarios where you feel helpless, where you are the one who created the problem. You are always the problem. You're crazy. I'll get on the crazy part later. But basically creating and putting you in scenarios that you're uncomfortable with or forcing you to do situations and then punishing you. Punishing is a big one. You're always being punished. And you don't even know why you're being punished. It could be anything. Anything. I think I already mentioned coffee. It could be cheese. It could be the block of cheese that you bought. It could be anything. But little by little, you're punished. You're wrong. It's your fault. You do things. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. And you just get so beaten down little by little. So this is just the second part 2 of emotional and mental abuse, and how abusers take their people who are vulnerable and not wise to their games and their tricks and their antics, and can really, really do a lot of destruction. So I'm going to end this right now. I am 35 minutes in, and I've had 2 phone calls. So as you guys know, may the Lord bless you. May he keep you. And may his face shine upon you in graciousness and peace. And you know he stands behind you and beside you. And he goes before us, and he makes our crooked path straight. And I always say this, there's nothing that will ever keep you from the love of God. Not even your own will. When he has you and he knows you, doesn't mean that you're not going to go through some hard times, in embarrassing, humiliating decisions where you feel so broken and so lost and just so degraded. But he says, I got you. And when the time is right, I have a rescue for you. And that's the rescue story, part 2. All right, so God bless. And I'll catch up with you guys soon.